So today we're going to talk about engaging young men and boys of color in our after-school programs. We're going to share with you a little bit about what parents and families tell us that they want for their sons. We're going to do some exploration of resources aligned to 5 different evidence-based strategies that we've identified. And so we're really excited to kind of jump into everything. I'm gonna talk first about a little bit about us, just to kind of give you a sense of who we are and what we're about. Kelly, if you could go to slide 2 for me, if you would. I just want to make sure that you guys see that our you're going to have this presentation and you're going to have all the resources that we share with you today. I'm going to keep it in a Google Drive folder that you'll be able to access perpetually. My contact information and Kelly's contact information is here if you have follow-up questions. Do you see how to navigate backwards, Kelly?
No, I don't. Oh, I see it.
There you go. Yeah. And so you'll have all this information, but I want to make sure that you know who we are. And you can go ahead and land on slide 3 when you get that navigation down. So while COVID-19 and this pandemic have had a lot of terrible and negative effects on the way we live and just the world in general, there have been some things, some aspects of our shared experience here that I think we can find some positives to, and some interconnectedness that we've been able to experience really as a result of the capacity building that we've all done to be able to have sessions like this where we're coming together virtually and we're able to have conversations and engage and not all necessarily have to drive and be in the same place. You know, for us at Admission Plus, we've been fortunate to be able to connect with people from not just in Ohio, where we do most of our work and most of our partners are like the Ohio After School Network and COSA and others. But also we've been in 7 different states. We've been in New Zealand and Egypt and Swaziland, just by virtue of being able to conduct sessions like this one, which is really pretty exciting to us. And I hope to all of you, I hope you're all in a comfortable spot where you're participating in today's conference. We're going to be talking a little bit about the daunting number of obstacles in education, employment, and general well-being that are faced by young men and boys of color. We're going to talk about how, let's see, there's a constant messaging that even though our programs and our partners, and I'm sure your programs, are really designed to be inclusive and to engage with all of your young participants, that there are some obstacles that we need to be thoughtful and purposeful about addressing as we're engaging and making sure that the quality of engagement is where it needs to be. Kelly, are you still having trouble navigating that that slide deck?
No, I'm good. I just don't know when you want to move on.
Oh, I'm looking for slide 3. Looks to me like we're a little bit beyond that. There you go. All right. So that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about, and thinking about like the perspective that we come from at Envision Ed Plus. Our organization is a very small consultancy. You're looking at 1.5 of our 2.5 employees. We partner with schools, especially small and rural schools, with after-school programs, particularly in small towns and rural areas, but sometimes in more urban areas as well, and with youth-serving nonprofit organizations to address shared aspirations, like you see on the screen here. We have this belief system that really guides all of our work, that every child needs to be able to learn to think and innovate. And that means mastering the core academic skills that we all think about generally associate with school and after school academic enrichment. But we recognize that in order to be able to do that and be able to apply that knowledge and really be successful in their future academic explorations and future careers, that we need to have systems of support that address all of the kinds of non-academic barriers that we're talking about today, and not just about those things about race and equity, but also sort of socioeconomic status and gender issues and the whole gamut of things that get in the way of kids reaching their full potential. We recognize that educational systems like after-school programs or schools themselves need to really think about their systems, and they need to be able to think about their whole organization and how it's aligned and how all of the resources are aligned to supporting the young people in front of them. And we also recognize that no one program and no one school can do it all by themselves, that leveraging partnerships across their local communities, across the state, and the regions, and sometimes nationally, is really the best way to go about meeting the needs of the very specific needs of all of their children. So that's a little bit about us. We do that through training sessions like this, through some longer term professional development. We do it through helping organizations identify and leverage resources like partnerships, and we also do a lot of grant writing, that sort of thing, to help folks identify what their needs are, design innovative strategies and evidence-based strategies to address those needs, and then acquire the resources that they need in order to be able to implement their strategies. So that's what we do and where we're coming from. We can go ahead and move to the next slide, Kelly. So to start out today, we're going to ask you to think about two people you know, boys or young men of color, one who's in your program specifically, and one who maybe is not in your program, but might benefit from some of the things that you offer or could offer. I want you to think about these two people and maybe jot it down beside you. We're not going to share those out right now, but it'll be important to keep these two individuals in mind as we move throughout the morning. Eventually, after we get through these opening activities, we're going to orient you to a sort of a learner guide where you'll be able to take notes and process and reflect, and that these two individuals are going to be really important as we do that. It's also going to be really important for our next activity. So does everybody have two people in mind? Good. Okay. So as we think about these two young people, we really are thinking about how we can discover strategies that will help you create a safe and welcoming environments for those two people, to discover ways to better engage them academically, and how to build stronger relationships with these two young people. And finally, we're going to be thinking about how to develop ideas for how to expand your network community partners who can also bring to bear resources that can support you and your students. So where we're going to start and Kelly, if you would move to slide 5, please, is with an activity that is sometimes used in equity and implicit bias trainings. We've participated in these kinds of activities as learners. And in fact, we've put together the resources that you could use to conduct this same activity with your colleagues or even with your students. If that is something that you find to be useful, you'll have everything you need by the end of the session in order to be able to do this. We are going to use a tool that is available virtually. I'm going to drop a link to it in the chat and ask you to go to this and grab your abacus, because this is going to help us kind of illustrate the point of this activity. And you can do this on your phone if that's, if it's more useful for you to have 2 screens, or you can just pull it up on your computer screen from where you are. You're not going to need to see our presentation for a couple of minutes while you use that abacus, because I'll read what you need to know. Hey, Kelly, were you able to pull up that abacus? Can you show them, demonstrate for them what it looks like and how it works? So when you go to this, you'll see that there are rows that are color coded of beads, and you can just put your cursor on top of a bead and scoot it over to the other side, just like Kelly did. She moved 5 at a time. You could move 1 at a time or 2 at a time or whatever. And you're going to do this as I go through the some prompts here. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Let's see. Navigate in my notes. So we're going to do 2 sections of this activity. We're going to talk about privileges that are associated with race and privileges that are associated with class. The full activity that you'll have access to also has sections on religious privileges, gender orientation privileges, and ability privileges that may be relevant for your groups that you're working with. In any case, we're going to start with the pink line. And I am going to read prompts. And for each one of these that is true for you, you're going to move 1 bead to the right on your screen, okay? So let's get started. The first one, you can choose blemish bandages, Band-Aids in flesh color and have them more or less match your skin tone. If that's true for you, move a bead across to the right. Second one, you can go shopping, and most of the time you can be pretty well assured that you're not going to be followed or harassed in the store. 3, you can turn on the TV or engage in other forms of media and see people of your race widely represented. When you go to the supermarket, you can easily find foods representative of your family heritage. You can or have taken a job with an affirmative action policy without having coworkers or colleagues assume you got it because of your race. You can easily find posters, greeting cards, books, toys, etc., that are prominently featuring people of your race. Your ancestors came to the US by choice. Your primary ethnic identity is American. You do not have a foreign accent. You have never presumably been paid less because of your race or ethnicity. Everybody still following me? Next, we're going to move to the orange row, and we're going to consider class privileges. Again, you're thinking about yourself and moving an orange bead for any of these items that is true for you. First one, you always knew that you would attend college. Each student in your high school classroom had their own textbook, or if you're far younger than me, their own Chromebook. Your family owned the home that you grew up in. You never received free or reduced price lunch. You and your family never experienced the negative effects of the incarceration of a loved one. One or both of your parents has a college degree. You've never had to rely on public transportation. As a child, you attended private school or went away to summer camp. You have traveled internationally. As a child, you never skipped a meal due to lack of resources. All right. So now we're going to think about one of the young people that you came up with at the beginning, and pick one or the other one, maybe the one that you know best because he's in your program. And I want you to think about these same prompts from that young person's perspective. Okay, I'm going to read them to you again and ask you to move beads for them. So for the hopefully on your abacus, when you did pink for yourself and orange for yourself, you left a space. There was a red line underneath the pink where you can and use that line for the young person's race privileges. If you got turned around, just use another line. It doesn't really matter as long as you know which one is which. Okay. All right. So again, for the race privilege prompts, the first one, he can choose a blemish bandage and flesh color and more or less have it match his skin tone. He can go shopping, and most of the time he'll be pretty well assured that he will not be followed or harassed. He can turn on the TV or engage in other forms of media and see people of his race widely represented. When he goes to the supermarket, he can easily find foods representative of his family heritage. He could get into a college or earn a scholarship without others assuming that he got it because of his race. He can easily find posters, greeting cards, books, toys, etc., prominently featuring people of his race. His ancestors came to the US by choice. His primary ethnic identity is American. He does not have a foreign accent. He has never been singled out for discipline in school or in his community, presumably because of his race, ethnicity, or the color of his skin. Okay. Now we're going to move down to the yellow line. And I'm going to read some prompts again about class privilege. Move the bead to the right if any of these are true for the young person you're thinking about. He has always been confident that he will someday attend college. Even before COVID-19, each student in his classroom had access to computers and internet access at home and at school. His family owns the home he's living in. He has never received free or reduced price lunch. He has never experienced the negative effects of the incarceration of a loved one. One or both of his parents has a college degree. He's never had to rely on public transportation. He attends a private school or goes away to summer camp. He has traveled internationally. And finally, he has never skipped a meal due to lack of resources, nor has he ever participated in a program that sends food home with him from school. All right. So now, for a moment, Kelly, will you stop the sharing your screen so that we can see as many people as possible? I want to ask you for your thoughts and reflections about this activity, and welcome you to unmute yourself and speak up, or to use the chat, whatever is most comfortable for you. But I'm wondering, what are some of the similarities or differences that you see between your privileges and those of your students? Anyone want to chime in?
I'll go. I'm Dolores. Good morning. Hi.
Good morning.
I would say between my privileges and my scholars' privileges, they're kind of similar. A few of my scholars don't have those privileges, and I didn't have those privileges growing up. So there's some similarities there. The only difference that really stood out to me is that my grandmother owned the home we lived in growing up, and I wasn't affected by the incarceration, but that was it. Those were the only two.
Great. So you have some common understanding and some ways of maybe just naturally from your own experience being able to identify with some of the challenges that maybe some of your colleagues in your program even don't quite identify as easily because they have different experiences. That's terrific. Other thoughts? Did anybody else notice any striking similarities or differences?
Good morning. My name is Cedric. How is everybody?
Great. Thanks, Cedric. We appreciate hearing your thoughts. Go ahead.
I thought it was very interesting, and it was kind of enlightening and made me think about stuff on a different level. Not something I always kind of compare my experience with those of my scholars. I relate to some of them, so I kind of understand some of the stuff, you know, but to really pinpoint certain things. And I think there were some things that maybe could have also been asked with that as far as experiences within the home. You know, there's a lot of other things that go on, even though I may have two parents and they may be, you know, college educated. I don't miss meals, but there are other episodes and situations and things that happen that, you know, would also happen in the home of one of my scholars, you know, i.e. domestic violence, alcoholism, drug abuse, and stuff like that. And that usually leads to incarceration issues, which I have also experienced. So, yeah, but it was interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's a great thought. You know, if this is an activity that you choose to replicate with others, you could certainly modify, add or change the prompts if you thought that that was relevant to talking about. As I mentioned, there's a couple other categories, but it almost seems like the category that you bring up about that home stability and experience and environment might even be a category of its own, because that is so critical to consistency and day-to-day well-being and mental health, social emotional capacity to be able to even think about learning, right? Talking about issues of fear and trauma. What about, anybody have any thoughts about how often do you think that the young person you were thinking of thinks about privilege or lack thereof? Is that an awareness that your young people have?
I don't
Um,
think, oh, I'm sorry, I'm Crystal. Hey, everybody. I don't think they're aware of it. I don't think anyone's really aware of it until you put in that position to consider it. Um, with my scholars, we have some similarities, very little, because they have a lot of things that I didn't have growing up. Some of them do have, I grew up in a single parent household, and some of them do, but a lot of them have both of their parents. They have a lot more than I had growing up as a child. But I don't think you really think about privilege until you're in a situation where it's like, I went to inner city school and also had the opportunity to go to a suburban school. So I saw two different aspects of that situation as well.
Right.
So in that, being put in that suburban school put me in a situation where I had to endure racism and things of that nature. And this was 1994. So, but when I was in the inner city, a lot of people, they look like me. So we got along, we related to a lot of things. But when I was out there, they had no idea who we were, what we stood for, what we went through in our life. It was no nothing. So it was a big difference.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point. And for young people or adults as well, unless you take time to intentionally think through these things, you may take some notions for granted. I, personally experienced before participating in some intentional training of my own that, I thought it was a strong ally. I thought I had considered these kinds of privileges and differences before, but until you really kind of take the time to break it down and spell it out, or when you take the time to do that, you uncover some perspectives that might surprise you. That was my experience. Does anybody have any thoughts about how identity and privilege might impact your connections and relationships with the young person that you're thinking of? I know a couple of you have alluded to that a little bit, just about being able to relate experientially. Can anybody take that a step further? Is it possible that if, from a young person's perspective, if there are significant differences, or they perceive that there are significant differences in experience and privilege, that they might be guarded, maybe less willing to show if they're having a struggle, or less willing to receive a helping hand if it's obvious that they're having a struggle? Go ahead, Crystal.
I think with kids or even with adults, we tend to gravitate towards those that we can relate to. So if they don't see any similarities between you, or they don't see things that they can relate to you, they're not going to share with you. They're not going to be forthcoming with information. But I think that's just in general, even as us as adults, you have to sometimes show someone that they can trust you before they're shared with you. And that also is the same thing with children. They have to show you, I mean, you have to show them that they can trust you. And sometimes when you don't look alike, or they don't think that you went through the same thing that they went to, I had to share that with my scholars. I have some scholars who have anger issues. Um, we can relate because I was in that same position. And once they heard my story, once I had to share that with them, it opened up a lot of doors for them to be able to come to me and say, Miss Crystal, I'm angry, and share why they're angry. And I always let them know that's a valid emotion. It's okay to be angry, but it's what you do after you're angry, after you get angry. Because I know, a lot that can happen. So they have to be able to identify you. You have to be able to share with them your story and let them know you weren't always, where you weren't always where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's key. I have the habit of assuming that everybody else has always had it all together. and I sometimes get embarrassed about, little shortcomings or little challenges, because I think everybody around me would already know how to do this, and I don't want to admit that I don't know how. I imagine that's pretty common, and you've got to have a lot of trust to get past those pieces. Thank you. All right, Kelly, if you would reshare your screen, please, and go ahead and go to slide 18. I'm gonna share one more link with you. The link that I just dropped in the chat is to the folder that I alluded to earlier, which has all of the resources that we're going to use today and leave you with. We're going to dive into a little bit of research says, what parents have been telling us through national surveys, and we've got even some Ohio specific data in your folders for you. And then we're going to jump into some breakout rooms a couple of times. We're going to organize you with a couple of partners. I think we'll do groups of 3 today. And so that together you can explore some of the resources that we've put together. And we'll talk about 5 strategies for strengthening engagement. And we will think about some of the easy, like grab and go stuff. Here's some resources that you can take and you can implement right now. And we'll also think about some of the tougher ones that require maybe some external partnership, maybe some planning, maybe that are a little bit harder. And finally, we're going to do a little bit of brainstorming about rethinking systems. So we'll have all levels as starting points. I put the link to the folder in your in the chat, and you'll want to go ahead and go there. The first thing that I want to kind of orient you to in that folder before I jump into some of the research. And Kelly, would you be able to share what the inside of that folder looks like? There you go. So there's some subfolders and there's a couple of documents that are in there. I'll point out to you that our presentation, there's a copy of our presentation from today in there, in case you want to reference it later. There is also a document called Learner Reflections. You can go ahead and open that up so that you have it handy. This is a guide. There's a place for you to jot down the names of the 2 young people you were thinking of. There's a place to reflect a little bit on the privilege activity that we just did. And then there's some additional places to take notes about some of the resources that we're going to explore. So I wanted to give you a chance to get a hold of that before we get to the point where we're ready to jump into breakout rooms. But So you've got that. So now we can toggle back, Kelly, to the presentation. And I'm going to be on slide 19 here. All right. So we, as we developed this presentation, which we did, by the way, in partnership with the Ohio After School Network and the Colorado After School Partnership. This was something that the Colorado group wanted for statewide training. And so we put it together, and we've got data about both Colorado and Ohio, specifically in your folder, because those were our original target audiences. There's also national data. And we looked at studies, things that like the NAA, the National After School Alliance, commissioned to get an idea of what boys and young men of color need and what their families are looking for them. The first thing that is, very well worth pointing out is that in general, for African American children and other young boys and young men of color, it's the same as for everybody else. For every one child who is now participating in an after-school program, there are 3 more who would participate if they had the chance. They're waiting to get in. Across the US, there's more than 2 million Black children who would likely participate in an after-school program if it were available to them. That's a lot of kids. Kelly, if you would go ahead and go to the next slide. Yeah, there we go. I want you to think a little bit about, maybe enter something in the chat if you have a thought here about what's might be similar or different in your community compared to what these national statistics are telling us. I'll kind of share a couple of highlights from what's on your screen. Transportation, of course, is, as I'm sure you all know, is can be a barrier to children participating in after-school programs. And that's particularly true perhaps for low-income parents in general, but even more so for Latinx low-income parents and for Black low-income parents. Across each of these barriers, as a matter of fact, we see when you combine the socioeconomic status with the ethnic status, you see kind of a amplification of the barriers. So thinking about the convenience of the location of after-school programs, especially in conjunction with those transportation issues, and the hours of operation, particularly when you're thinking about parents' needs and parents' work schedules, and parents who may be working not traditional shifts, or maybe working more than one shift in a day. Thinking about whether they're available at all in a community where children live. And is there capacity in a program if it already exists for young people? These are big things. Are they similar challenges in your community? Anything jump out at you as different at all? I see, Will points out, yeah, they're dealing with transportation, and you know what? Well, and like especially right now, bus drivers. There's a shortage, not just in Ohio, but nationally. It's sort of uncanny the lengths to which schools and other programs are going to try to provide transportation, even if they have the resources financially to be able to do it. They don't necessarily have the drivers. That's one of the impacts of this pandemic that might not have been anticipated, for sure. And it does get in the way of serving young people. also want to think about what parents tell us that they want, and there's a lot of overall surveys. Kelly, if you go ahead and go to slide 21. Knowledgeable and caring staff and a safe environment are the top reasons that Black parents selected their child's after-school program, and that's similar for other parents to parents overall. 93%, 94%, respectively, are the percentage of parents who said, yeah, these are our most important reasons: the caring staff and the safe environment. But there were some differences between African American parents and parents overall in some of the secondary reasons that they selected their child's after-school program. That includes things like the opportunity to help their children be more excited about learning, providing academic enrichment, and offering learning activities that are not provided during the school day, sort of extending or building on the concepts, but learning in different ways. These are things that we saw, that you can see for Black and for Latinx parents, are even more important than to white parents, as for whatever reasons. These are the some of the priorities that we see in the survey results. Kelly, going on to the next one, you'll see similar differences in on those topics. And then on slide 23, when we ask about things like STEM learning activities and college or career explorations, those were also significantly important for parents of color. And I think that those differences are important to keep in mind as we're considering the programming that our programs offer, and the things that we could offer and should be thinking about adding. Kelly, we're going to skip 24 and go on to thinking about the strategies for addressing these issues. So there's 5 strategies listed here. I'm going to talk through each of them a little bit. This is based on the citation that's there on your screen. There's a research review that looked at trends in literature, looked at lots of different studies and information really across the whole out-of-school time continuum, and looked for what was working and what wasn't. And effective evidence-based strategies fell in these 5 categories. There's an article about these results that's in your resource folder, so you can read a little bit more and go a little bit deeper. But I'm going to kind of go over it right now a little bit. Most likely, every one of your programs does at least the first 3 strategies in the schools that your young people attend and in the after-school programs that you work with. But there are some specificity to these strategies that may or may not be fully in effect in these places. So I want to talk about those things a little bit. First, on the topic of academic strategies, these are programs that primarily support school success, usually involving academic support and college and career preparation kinds of activities. The key difference between what is, almost most commonly seen and what is most effective comes down to the alignment with what parents said that they want, thinking about the STEM and the college and career exploration, but also the links to what kids actually care about, connecting the academic activities to things that they're interested in, whether that's a career goal or a personal interest or hobby, or just something that's relevant in their in their life, if they're not making that connection between the academic content and what they're interested in, there's a gap. And so we think about strategies like STEM education, entrepreneurship activities, problem-based learning, maker education, things that are hands-on, that those make a big difference in the academic strategies. We also think about the mentoring strategies, and a lot of programs do have mentoring, but there's one type of mentoring that kind of stands above the others as being especially effective for boys and young men of color, and that's called critical mentoring. Critical mentoring is kind of the shared development between the mentor and the mentee of a critical consciousness, and it's consciousness that is the ability to perceive and understand social, political, and economic oppression. So in other words, talking real talk and straight up about some of the systemic barriers that may be all around the mentor and the mentee, and strategizing about how to deal with such issues so that young people, as they're developing, become more and more ready to take action against the oppressive elements of society, but also to be able to recognize barriers and address them in their own day-to-day lives. It's really about beginning with the understanding of youth context. Critical mentoring allows the relationships to focus on providing mentees with the opportunities to reflect, discuss, challenge systems of inequity, and it yields more extensive conversations about race, gender, class, those kinds of things, sexuality, ableism, etc. And offers both the mentor and the mentee the ability to address those issues and how they permeate society and cultures and places that they're navigating on a regular basis. In other words, professional places, schools, programs. And so that we've got some resources in your folder that dig a little bit deeper into critical mentoring as a strategy, but that is one that I want to bring to your attention. There's also enrichment strategies. That's the third one on our list, and we think about enrichment that have skill building as part of them, leadership development. This can happen in sports, media arts, technology, clubs, those kinds of things. You know, surely your programs have some of these kinds of strategies already in play in your programs, which is pretty cool. But it's also important that there's youth voice represented. Are those opportunities that are available in your program reflective of what the young people in your program say that they want and say that they're interested in participating in? And then do they have a leadership role within those activities to determine, you know, specific directions that they go in? Those are really cool questions to ask yourself, and a good way of looking at a continuous improvement strategy. The final two on this list, the policy advocacy and the rites of passage, are most likely less commonly employed across after-school programs in Ohio. I'd be really interested to hear if any of you are currently doing programming in these areas. In the policy advocacy, that is, again, it's student-led, and it ties in pretty closely with the critical mentoring strategy, but it really is about identifying personal and political opportunities for transformation, consciousness raising, research, organizing, and advocacy. These kinds of initiatives can help build awareness and also catalyze youth to action around some of the structural barriers that are root causes for the challenges that they face. And that can have a tremendous impact on their ability to navigate those challenges day to day. Rites of passage are programs that focus on restorative strategies that are rooted in particular cultures of origin. And these programs posit that young men rediscovering or discovering for the first time their cultural heritage can help build ethnic pride, strengthen knowledge about their history, and foster a worldview that values community, balance, and harmony. Again, we've got some resources that are aligned to these two areas, and how to employ them or how to get started, or other organizations that can provide support. But these are the 5 that are really pretty important. And I'll go ahead and ask the question, is anybody doing anything that they think falls into the policy advocacy or the rites of passage strategy in their programs right now? I don't know. Okay. Well, that's okay. That's terrific. If as we kind of move through our resource exploration, we'll have the chance to be able to dive in a little bit. So why don't we get to it? Kelly, would you go ahead and create some breakout rooms, and you can actually stop the screen share so we can see folks and kind of explain how these are going to work. Don't open them yet. But I think we're going to, how many people do we have here with us today? We have 31, so why don't you go ahead and make 10 breakout rooms. I see also I was noticing Danielle's comment about her desire to develop a program that her scholars participate in open table discussions and addressing issues for teens in the community, similar to the Boys and Girls Club. Do they do similar programs like that? That's cool. Okay, so when we go into our breakout rooms, which Kelly is setting up, I'm going to share my screen real quick here so that we can, kind of orient you to what I'd like you to do for the next few minutes. So we're going to take a look in your participant resources folder. And where I want you to start is with this Do It Right Now resources. We're going to take a few minutes and give you the opportunity as a small group to explore some of the links and resources that are in there and identify something to share back with the rest of us. Did you see something that looked particularly useful, something you could run with? Or maybe there's something, we tried to find resources that we didn't think you would have seen before, but if somebody has used one of these and thought it was great or thought it was terrible, tell us that. These are meant to be resources that you can kind of take and run with real quick, okay? They are organized into some categories on the sheet. There's a group about entrepreneurship. There's, oops, if I could scroll appropriately, one about STEM and STEAM activities. Some opportunities to think about how to integrate culture and literacy together, those kinds of things. So we're going to give you like 10 minutes to explore a little bit and bring you back, and I'll be interested in some of your reflections, okay? Is everybody, all right, Kelly, open the breakout rooms, let's go. Oops. if anybody's having any trouble getting to their breakout room, there should be a little message that comes up on, oh, everybody got there. Yay. So we are going to do 10 minutes, which means we need to reconvene at 10:52. And sort of lost track. Michael, if people kind of jump in, give me just a second. Hi there, Ivan. We have just sent everybody out into breakout rooms where they're exploring a resource sheet. I'm going to just go ahead and drop you into a room, and you'll be there with 2 or 3 other people. They will be able to catch you up on the current activity. There's just a few minutes left, okay?
I put him in room 8.
Perfect. All right. Are you having trouble getting there, Ivan? Did you see a pop-up that invited you to join the room? If not, you may look at the bottom of your screen. Oh, you got it. Good. All right. Michael, what time does this session end? And do I need to end early at all?
The session goes until 11:15.
Okay.
Yep.
I will.
Hello, I apologize. I unfortunately got in late and did not get the link to the document. Could I have that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And then I was in breakout room 9, so I can go
Okay,
back to that
perfect.
after.
I'm gonna drop this in the chat. That's the link to the whole folder and the documents inside there.
Perfect.
Then you probably can just navigate back. If you look at the bottom of your screen and see breakout rooms, it should let you go back.
Cool. And is the link is in where did you say the link is at?
Oh, it's in the chat.
That just went directly to me on accident.
Oh, oops.
No worries.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, Jada. Did you are you just now joining us, or did you fall off and you're coming back
I
now?
fell off and my internet was acting crazy, but I'm coming back in now.
Okay. Do you happen to remember what room you were in?
No, I think I was in a room with like Rondell and some other people.
Looking for what that might be. Well, maybe you'll get in a different room this time. Try one. We just drop her.
It did say on mine where the breakout rooms that you could it had mine to like join. I don't know if it would be the same though if you were left the meeting and came back.
Yeah, it's sometimes when your connection is lost, you can go right back into it, and sometimes not so much. And it looks like
It gave me a message here though that says join breakout room. So
go for it.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So Kelly, when we come back, I shortened that first activity, but we're still a little over on this training. So when we come back, I'm gonna do a less intensive debrief than what Michelle has outlined here. So I don't even think we need to use we won't even show those slides. We'll just kind of do it as an open discussion.
Okay.
And then we will move to, we'll do another breakout, probably 10 minutes again, where we're going to look at the critical mentoring, the rites of passage, and the health and wellness resources, and debrief about that. And I think that's, in that debrief, I'll kind of incorporate that last set of questions. So I'll just tell you what slide to be on, if any.
Okay.
You know, we actually might not use that too much anymore if we're going back and forth with discussions.
Okay.
Hi, Ashley. Can we help you get back into a breakout room, or are you just joining us now?
We just kind of had minor discussions, so just came back. I didn't know how long.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we're gonna give the rest of the group about 2 more minutes, so you're all good. Did you find anything good in there?
Kind of, not too talkative of people, but
Gotcha.
I should just.
Oh, go ahead. I am going to send out that 2-minute warning. Oops. I guess that should have been a 1-minute warning. I'm going to go ahead and close these because it'll give them a 60-second countdown. At least Zoom has been pretty good about doing that. Or it just kicks them out sooner. All right, welcome back, folks. I'll give a few more seconds for the rest of the group to make their way back here. Zoom is still a little bit funny. It was getting better. It's definitely getting better. But there still seems to be like two groups. The first group comes back right away, and then the second group has to wait for the whole countdown to go down. All right. Could I get anybody to volunteer to share perhaps a resource that jumped out at them or something that they recognized or think they might use?
You said a resource?
Yeah. Yeah, from the list that you were looking at.
So I'm Deja Demings. I'm in Dayton, Ohio, West Dayton, Ohio, with the Omega CDC. We have two 21st century sites, Fairview Elementary and Elwyn Joe Brown Middle School. One thing that we have been running with that I was actually a part of a long time ago is Rites of Passage. And Rites of Passage is a very, very, very important, not even just a motivator, but mentorship, just enlightening the scholar of who they are and why they are and how to be what they want to be, exactly how they are. So things like that really empower the scholars without them knowing they're being empowered is a major plus in this work.
Yeah. Could you give us an example of what that looked like when you did it?
So in like 2003, when I was in the program, it started off with talking about like who you are and where you're from, right? So I'll give you guys an example. Sankofa. Sankofa is a bird that is, it's a picture of a bird that's flying forward, but it's looking backwards with the egg in its mouth, which represents taking the knowledge from the past and using it in the future. Having like an entire maybe 2 weeks talking about what that means for them. What is that in real life, right? We'll show them the picture. Hey, would first draw the picture, right? Color the picture. Now let's talk about certain things that you see. Why is this egg in his mouth, Miss Deja? Okay, well, let's talk about what the egg is. The egg represents, what you're getting ready to do. Why is it looking backwards? Because, sometimes you have to look behind to see what not to do when you're moving forward. And it just turns into such a big, mind changer for them to be able to compare themselves to even something as simple as a bird and seeing how it's related, so that's what works for us.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. What else? Did anybody identify anything on the easy to do, run with it right now list that looks like something that you might want to incorporate into your program?
There was one of the resources about activities. I think it was the creativity catapult that had a lot of good STEM activities that I can do with my scholars. My scholars really react well to like seeing their progress and like building something, so they can like see like a start and a finish and know that they accomplished something. So I think that I'll definitely use some of those so they can enjoy it and have fun with that.
Good. That sounds really cool. Thanks, Aaron. I appreciate it. I have a question because I'm noticing some real common language among all of you that I've only heard maybe here and there before, but you're all, or it seems like you're all, the ones who are speaking up are referring to your young people as scholars. Is that a program specific language that you've adopted, or is that becoming broader across the after school program?
So my program is called Scholars of Hope. That's actually the title of our after school program, but a scholar is a lifelong learner. So we say that to our parents, to our volunteers, even myself. If you're learning something every single day, you're a scholar. So it was really interesting to see when we came in today that a lot of people call their students scholars. So that was actually it's kind of like divine, right? Like that's just great that we're like in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I love hearing it. I mean, I'm gonna have to adopt that. I like the language a lot. So thank you. Okay. Well, why don't we, oh, does anybody have anything else to add? Somebody chiming in? I didn't want to cut anybody short.
One that I liked was looking at the motivation. That's definitely something that I feel like it's probably across the board that we're all dealing with. I know myself, I've dealt with it with my own work. But so I work with high schoolers, and there's definitely, usually it comes later in the year, but I feel like there's already a little bit now, especially with some of the classes and stuff where it's like, oh, why do I need to do this? Why are we learning this? One thing we've been, because we started a couple weeks ago, so we already kind of are dipping our toes into talking about goals and the importance there. And I definitely liked looking through there some of the ways of talking about approaching goal setting and emphasizing the importance there of having that kind of thing you're working towards to keep you motivated, so that you have sort of like you're mapping out the year, so you're taking steps.
Great. Yeah, I like that. I mean, motivation and time management, those are really critical professional skills to be able to navigate. And it doesn't necessarily come naturally unless you're already seeing that direct connection to your own interests and what needs to get done. So helping them find that, or any way of doing that, is good. Okay. Well, I want to make sure we have a little bit of time to explore some of the other categories of resources and the resources that we put together that are specific to boys and young men of color. There is, so you already looked at the Do It Right Now resources. In the participant resources folder, I'm gonna share that one more time because I know some people kind of fell off and logged back in, and they might not have might have lost access to the link. There's a folder, a subfolder of called specific resources, BYMOC specific resources. Let's take a few minutes in our small groups, and I would encourage you to share with each other when you're in your groups. I think some of you probably had a little bit of discussion, and some of you just worked independently, and honestly, either is fine, but we did kind of pretend it's a table you're sitting across from, one or two other people, and you have the opportunity to divide and conquer a little bit or highlight something specific that you're seeing. And these are going to get into some of the strategies like what Deja went right to, talking about the rites of passage. There's some things in here for that. So let's go ahead and reopen in one moment, the breakout rooms. We are going to reconvene here at 10 after, and we're going to do a little bit of final discussion and reflection as we wrap up today's session. So we will see you back here in 10 minutes. I didn't realize that co-hosts couldn't create polls, Kelly.
I think must be off in their settings because I don't have an option. And I think you have to turn it on when you create the Zoom.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's no big deal. We've got plenty of material here. I'm just going to rush into the restroom. I'll be right back.
Hello, did you get kicked off?
Yeah, my internet cut it off.
Okay, do you remember what room you were in?
Yeah, I believe I was with no, I don't.
Okay.
I was thinking Danny Burns and no, I don't remember the number.
Okay. I think I know which one.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
going to go ahead and close those rooms, Kelly. And if you would put up slide 32, that'd be great. Looks like a few more seconds.
It has it in
There's everybody.
the reading. I don't know if you guys seen it or not.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about.
All right, we're back in the main session now. Sorry to interrupt you guys. I'm glad you were having a good conversation though. You want to share with us what you were looking at? Desmond and friends?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We were just talking about, we were just skimming through the things, just trying to figure out what we can you know, get out of the article or the journal. And we were just talking about how in Ghana they have every year to where if the diaspora of people who have Ghana in their blood, and particularly the tribe, the Ashanti tribe, where you come and you visit and you experience the culture in December. It's sort of like a Kwanzaa. It's a 7-day tribal passage, and it talks about it here in the journal, but it talks about the Akan tribe, which is I want to say northwest of Accra, which is the main capital of Ghana. So it's like the I think it's the northwest region of Ghana.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, did anybody have some thoughts about how or whether they might be able to incorporate any of these 3 strategies into their programs or amplify them more than you're already doing?
Yeah, I think the third one would be a challenge, but I'm lucky enough to have a co-coordinator in my program where we have theme days, and on Wednesday, we dedicate our Wednesdays to wellness. It's our Wellness Wednesdays, where we're going to be focusing on mental health, physical fitness, and then wellness. Something that's kind of like really overlooked a lot in programs like this that I've been involved in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not just running around the gym until you get a little bit tired, although that's good.
Yes, it wasn't my idea, but it was a great one.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. I'm glad that you guys are working on that kind of thing already. So we just have about 2 minutes left. And my final question for the group is how you see your role in implementing these strategies, I'm thinking about more of from a perspective of systemic change. Do you have a part in that, or do you see yourselves as having a part in that? And if so, can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah.
Can you repeat that question for me? It sounded a little bit robotic, so I only got a half of it.
Oops. Well, Ivan, if you had a thought already, you can go ahead because I want to make more time for you guys than for me.
No, I would just say, could you repeat the question?
Oh, okay. So I'm sorry, it must be my connection. So I mean, I'm curious how you see your roles in your programs in terms of affecting broader change, systemic change that helps to leverage lots of resources to support the young men and the boys that you're serving and that have been thinking about this whole morning. What can you do?
One thing that I really liked from all this is talking about the critical mentoring. For one, I mentioned it in our breakout, is talking about how it's the mentor and the mentee both growing and kind of learning together. For one thing, is obviously as a white guy, there are things that some of my students have experienced or will experience, you know, that I do not. So it's important for me to remember that, and also find ways to, you know, whether it's like trainings, reading, talking to people to better equip myself. But then at the same time, remember that, you know, there are just some things that I can't experience and won't, but I can still be there to help support them. But one thing that we saw this summer that was really cool is we did a resume building class. And one thing that stuck out to me, and when I talked with the students that they appreciated the most, was our instructor. She shared some very specific strategies and just kind of talking about discrimination within like recruiting and HR. For example, one thing is her name is a somewhat common name, but spelled differently. And so she talked about how she's a very well-educated person, has a lot of good experience. But there have been times where simply based off of that, like whether it's algorithms or a person, she didn't get a call back or interviewed. So one, like a simple strategy she talked about, like using your initials on a resume rather than your full name, in order to give yourself a leg up, and so that you're not judged before, you know, they even see your character. And there are a few others. So things like that of going into one, addressing that it exists and that it's there, and that there are things that, whether, you know, it's not fair, but to expect. And then she shared very specific strategies going forward, especially for a lot of those kids are, you know, they're juniors and seniors. So they're thinking about starting their careers, continuing their education. And so giving them those tools to really prepare themselves.
I think that's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think your last sentence, this is about giving you tools to be able to give your young people tools that they need so that you can all be successful. We are at the end of our time this morning. I want to thank all of you for participating.